For 12 years before my appointment, from 1982 to 1995, I was in the City of St. Louis Law Department. My primary functions were to handle major litigation for the cities and also to handle appeals generally. I did a lot of appellate litigation. I was appointed circuit judge in 1995. I retired in early 2017. I was asked to be the city councilor of the City of St. Louis by the new mayor. In other words, I was asked to be the head of the office that I had formerly been a subordinate in. And I did that until November of 2020, when I retired from the practice of law. One judge I admired and learned from an enormous amount was from Judge Robert Durker. I worked with Bob as a young lawyer in the city councilor's office and learned an enormous amount from Bob about how to be a lawyer. Bob is enormously learned in the law, and he was a great guide and mentor. Another judge who I greatly admired, and he's on my mind because he died very recently, was Brendan Ryan. Judge Ryan was a great combination of intellect, and he knew how to deal with people and common sense. In the abstract, the role of a judge in preserving our separation of powers and enforcing it is very, very significant. It's the responsibility of judges to make sure that the executive branch and the legislative branch don't act in excess of their authority, and that they comply with the law just as anybody else does. I was the head of the Rules Committee of the court for many years. We prepared a pretrial release manual. And I put a lot of effort into that. When I came on board, we had a master calendar for both criminal cases and civil cases, criminal felony cases, and for civil cases that would be assigned to a circuit judge. And I was part of a group of judges who wanted to change that system to an individual docketing system, where individual judges would be assigned cases at their inception and carry them with them throughout the entire history of the case. And that was a very contested issue in the court. There were very strong feelings about it. It roiled the court for several years. And those judges on my side, the individual docketing side, won a temporary victory, and we went to individual docketing for about 2 years. And then the court went back to the master calendars, both criminal and civil. So from my point of view, that was an unsuccessful effort. I believe I've heard more recently the court's gone back to individual docketing, or at least is experimenting with it. But those would be probably the two major efforts that I made to improve the functioning of the court. I tried, which I believe was one of the last capital murder cases that was tried in the city. The defendant was not found guilty of first-degree murder, so capital punishment was off the table, but he was found guilty of second-degree murder. And at the sentencing hearing, both the victim's family got a chance to address the court, and as well as the defendant's family, and it was extraordinarily moving. The defendant in this case was, we had a pretty solid life. This thing came out of nowhere, and as they all tried to grapple with the enormity of what had happened, the eloquence was breathtaking. It was as if you were watching a movie written by a professional scriptwriter. The eloquence that both the defendant's family and the victim's family presented to the court was extraordinary, and I never will forget that. Very few people are appointed to the bench who have that wide expanse of experience. So you need help. You shouldn't lie to yourself about it. Ask for help from your colleagues. That would be my advice to a new incoming judge. To a lawyer, I would say this. When you appear before a jury and you say things that are ridiculous, you know what? The jury is going to think that you're ridiculous and you're not worthy of being believed. And so the next time you appear before the judge, you're going to be appearing before a judge who is distrustful of you and thinks you're not credible. So I say, be honest. There's almost always something you can honestly argue on behalf of your case. So that's the advice I'd give to an attorney who's new to practice. Over the last 4 or 5 years, there there have been critics of the nonpartisan court plan, and the criticisms they make are not necessarily invalid. The nonpartisan court plan should not be compared to a perfect plan that exists nowhere and could never be implemented. It needs to be compared with other ways of choosing judges. I live in St. Louis. Every time there are elections, we watch commercials for elections being held in Illinois, including elections for judges. And I am appalled, always appalled, when I see the advertisements and commercials for judges in Illinois. I would hate for us to have that system here. I always loved being a lawyer, and I loved being a judge. These are not easy careers, but if you think that you are a good fit for them, for these positions, and go for it.